morning and welcome to Rising. We have a just splendid show for you today, of course.
As always.
It is Tuesday morning, yes, and I'm excited about it, aren't you?
Me too. I'm always excited to be here with you in D.C. from Denver. So tell me, what's on your radar?
Okay, let's do it. Well, when it comes to the conflict between Israel and Iran, the U.S. government and President Donald Trump, most of all, needs to listen to America First conservatives who know that the people of the U.S. do not want our country involved in another regime change war. In fact, I can't say it any better than Tucker Carlson, who was on Steve Bannon's podcast yesterday to urge Trump to let cooler heads prevail. Importantly, Tucker emphasized that this is not about being anti-Israel. It's not anti-Israel at all to want to engage in diplomacy with Iran rather than warfare. Watch this.
If you think I'm anti-Israel, man, you have lost the plot, son. If you think I'm your enemy, not at all. I like Israel. Are you kidding? I've spent a lot of time there. I continue to like it. I pray that Jerusalem is not damaged. I feel so sad for the Israelis who've been killed in the last couple of days and the Iranians who've been killed in the last couple of days who had nothing to do with any of this.
Tucker continues.
But the point is, if you think that saying, hey, let's focus on my country where I was born, where my family's been for hundreds of years, that was the promise of the last election, please do it. If you think that's hate, you know, you've really lost perspective, I guess is what I would.
Tucker went on to say that while he loves Trump, he is really worried that if Israel drags the U.S. into its war, Trump's entire agenda could be derailed. I actually really love Trump, says Tucker. I think he's a deeply humane, kind person, but I'm really afraid my country is going to be further weakened by this. I think we're going to see the end of the American empire, end quote. Tucker then criticized the neocons and nation builders in the Republican Party who are pushing the U.S. toward war. He called them out by name, Mark Levin, Sean Hannity, and others who do not have the best interests of the MAGA movement and the Trump agenda, let alone the nation, in mind. Meanwhile, Iranian officials are signaling behind closed doors that they are open to more dialogue with the U.S. about nuclear proliferation if the U.S. does not join Israel's war effort. Now, that's according to reporting in the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere. An Arab official told the Journal that the Iranians know the U.S. is supporting Israel in its defense, and they are sure the U.S. is supporting Israel logistically, but they want guarantees the U.S. won't attack or won't join the attacks. That's all we have to do. Stay out of the conflict involving two other foreign nations and engage in diplomacy. Seems like a no-brainer. Yet too many people are succumbing to magical thinking about regime change. They believe that if the U.S. helps Israel launch further attacks on Iran, the regime will crumble. Netanyahu has even suggested that Israel might target the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. Trump has reportedly nixed that idea so far, thank goodness. Look, how many times must we learn this lesson? Overthrowing and killing the bad guys in the Middle East, that's the easy part. Replacing them with people who aren't even worse is hard. We learned this in Iraq. We learned it in Libya. Afghanistan was a disaster. Syria is so far so good, although the new leadership was formerly allied with ISIS and has indeed murdered dissidents all over the country. Keep in mind that the U.S. did not get overly involved in the Syrian revolution either, except by providing economic pressure in the form of sanctions. If anyone thinks that the U.S.-backed assassination of the Iranian supreme leader was going to lead to the creation of a pro-Western, secular, liberal democracy, I would ask you to have your head examined. Unfortunately, that ridiculous notion is believed by the bipartisan foreign policy establishment, the so-called experts in both parties, the people who brought you the Iraq war disaster. They are putting tremendous pressure on Trump to fall in line, do what they say, even though they've been proven wrong time and time again. Now we will see if Trump holds the line. There's another dimension to this, Lindsay, that is emerging. I saw Representative Thomas Massie tweeting about this. You know, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, and I bring this point up frequently, and it's just often ignored. The President of the United States cannot unilaterally go to war with a country. It is, in fact, Congress's responsibility to declare war. So if war with Iran is such a good idea, let it be debated and discussed in Congress, and Congress can vote to declare war on Iran, and then we can join Israel in its efforts if that's what our elected representatives think is wise. I don't think that's the right course of action, but if we're going to do that, it must be done properly, according to our Constitution. The president, not just Trump, any president cannot unilaterally take us to war without congressional oversight and approval. It just is not the case. It has to be that way. So I hope, as we're inching closer to conflict, and Trump seems more and more willing to go along and get involved. I hope the role of Congress is not forgotten. I saw Thomas Massey making that point, and AOC, one of the most far right and far left people, agreeing that Congress must assert itself here.
We don't need another war. There are very obvious diplomatic off-ramps right now on the table, but continuing the strikes is going to kind of slam that option because Iran has a firm stance that if you keep bombing us and we keep being in the middle of what is looking like a war, we're not going to continue to negotiate. But they have voiced, even as recent as yesterday, that they would like to continue speaking, just like they wanted to continue speaking 2 days ago on Sunday before they were attacked on Thursday. That was the plan. And sometimes these talks take longer than we'd like. Now, I hear a lot of people on the right who are in favor of going to war with Iran saying that, this is the time to strike. Iran is the weakest it's ever been. And there's a whole conversation about that perspective. But I don't think it's in our best interest. When we look at what Israel has done so far, they didn't even attack or affect the nuclear facilities, which is the main goal that they're going after. So killing the supreme leader, assassination will only start a new war. It's certainly not going to end one. I think it's going to fire up, and not that they have the manpower to beat the U.S., but it's like, why would we want to engage with a country that's allied with China and Russia when we obviously are talking about the same thing in Russia right now, not wanting to engage with them in that way? So why would we engage with one of their allies this way? I think there's better diplomatic ways to solve this. I also know that 224 people in Iran have already been killed. 24 Israelis have already been killed, and 600 have already been injured. So the number has probably skyrocketed by the time that you're or anyone at home is watching this. It's past that. And so I just want to know what is on the line. If civilians don't want this, then why are people doing this? I also think, Trump has to be careful about the mixed messaging, because when diplomacy is put out there by another country, there's Oman, Qatar, they're all asking for, a peaceful resolution to figure out how to continue to have talks. And Trump is saying, yeah, that's a good idea, and saying some of that. But then he's at G7 yesterday, and he's refusing to sign a de-escalation agreement that the rest of the countries there were asking him to sign. And so that would be a very obvious stance to say, of course, Israel's our ally. Of course, we support Israel, but we don't think this is a good idea. And like Trump is the poster child for being allowed to disagree with other leaders, even within his own party. He does that very publicly. So I don't know why we're tiptoeing around something that he even campaigned on not being a good idea.
I agree fully. I think that people are, again, duping themselves into a kind of, they'll greet us as liberators mindset. The regime is ready to fall. That might be the case that the regime is ready to fall. I can't tell. But who knows that it's going to be replaced by something that's better. That has been our experience in the Middle East, is replacing bad regimes with worse regimes. Now, maybe you can say you can't do worse than what they have. I guess that could be possible, but these authoritarians, these extremists, have proven to be more stable in this part of the world than we would like or expect, and I just don't know how many more times we need to learn this lesson. It seems like the same people who got Iraq so wrong are painting the exact same portrait of the situation in Iran, and with no acknowledgement that they were catastrophically wrong the last time. And I don't trust them. I don't know what credibility they have to assert that it is a good idea to start, indiscriminately bombing Iran, hoping to topple the regime, and that somehow we're going to come out ahead in all this. I just don't find that very plausible, and I think diplomacy is an avenue we have not yet exhausted and should resume. We're
going to be talking about this a lot more. Trump is suggesting that the G7 welcome back Russia into the fold, the pushback he's getting from his own party. Up next.